It's the end of the world as we know.
Ew, I hate my ankle.
Oh, fun.
Are we actually?
Apparently.
Okay. If you're talking, I can't hear you.
All right, 15 seconds.
Perfect. Thank you. Good. Start singing. Should I? No, just kidding. I never do that to you.
Good afternoon and happy Friday. This is Good News with Dan and Luce. I'm Dan Masacchio.
And I'm Lucy Shifko. For today's reading, we chose Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Let's get into it. Now, as they were traveling along, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And she had a sister called Mary, who was also seated at the Lord's feet and was listening to his word. But Martha was distracted with all her preparations, and she came up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do the serving by myself? Then tell her to help me." But the Lord answered and said to her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but only one thing is necessary. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her."
So I think something that's really interesting about this passage is you always find people relating with either Martha or Mary. It's just the thing that this passage does. I, more times than not, find myself relating with Martha. Being the oldest sibling of 3, having to do chores and being like the only one doing it, it gets really, really frustrating more times than not. So I just find myself relating with her so much, and there's just this huge temptation to like just think that she's the right thing.
Oh, absolutely. No, I remember, I used to struggle a lot with this passage because I just was like, it's so unfair. Like, Martha's the one doing the work, and, as an older sibling, you can relate. It's like, come on, we're doing the work, and our little siblings are slacking off. But, the issue that we were talking about when we were discussing this passage is that Martha is expecting a reward for working hard from the Lord, but Mary is the one who has a fruitful and rewarding relationship with Christ, where Martha's attitude is almost, the Lord will love me because I earned it, but Mary understands that the Lord's love is not something that we can earn, and it's freely given.
Yeah. No, I think that's really huge, is freely given love. It can be something that can be very hard to comprehend for like a lot of us, but that is what Jesus' love is in essence. It's just this free gift. I think also like another thing with this passage is like this contrast between the two of them, is that contrast between thinking of like the earning and then like the free gift. And like she goes out and like demands like his intervention because she's like, this is not fair. And it kind of isn't, but that's not really the point. I think that like maybe if she had went and was like, Jesus, can you help me? Like, I'm struggling here. This is really hard for me. Please come and help me to achieve this. Then I think Jesus would have probably dropped everything and would have been like, yeah, Martha, let's do this together. And I think that's really like something that is a really big takeaway that I think we discussed too.
Oh, absolutely. I totally relate to, I think it's so common for us to get frustrated and then to kind of demand things when we got ourselves in this pickle in the first place by thinking that we have to earn his love and that we have to work hard or get good grades or write a really good paper or get A's in all of your classes or whatever it is that you find yourself prioritizing over your relationship with Christ, kind of as a way to make yourself deserving of his love, which Mary knows you can't. You are not deserving of his love. He died so that we would deserve his love, but there's nothing that we can do, activity-wise to earn his love, which I think is definitely a good takeaway from this passage.
Yeah, I think you also brought up a really good point of like us being students. Like, it's so easy to get wrapped up in your academics and just in this spiral of like work, that you just forget to bring the Lord into it. And like kind of like what I was saying is like, you can bring the Lord into it. Like if Martha had come to the Lord and was like, Lord, help me, like that's a possibility. And like the Lord doesn't necessarily say like that what Mary is like that's the way to do things. He says like she chose the best part. And I think the key there is the word part. It's like two sides of the same coin. Yes, there is technically a better part because Jesus, but you can bring Jesus into the other side, which is just your work and your daily life. You need that time in like the port or in the chapel where you're sitting with the Lord and you are just listening to what he's saying, but you do need to go out and live your life. We're called to do that. We're not called to be potatoes on a couch. So we need to do that, but we can bring the Lord into that, like ora et labora, which is Latin for work and pray.
Oh, absolutely. When I remember when we were reading over this passage, we actually stumbled across a line from James, which was faith without works is dead. And that was such a revolutionary concept that maybe we don't have to pick Martha, which we shouldn't do anyways, or pick Mary, because that just feels wrong. But, in a way, Martha is the works and Mary is the faith. And one without the other is kind of meaningless. You can't really just say, oh, I believe, but I'm not going to do anything. Likewise, you can't, just completely be sunk into your work without bringing some element of understanding that your work is actually a means to an end. Your work is ultimately how you are meant to build a relationship with Christ. So I think there's actually a fine line between Martha and Mary. There's a golden mean, so to speak, where work hard, but have the trust that Mary had, that to know that there's nothing we can do to earn his love. It is freely given. But, don't be a couch potato either.
Yeah, and I think that's like the essence of what virtue is. Like virtue is the balance between two vices. It's like this middle point. That's the goal. So it's like you have like the work, which can really drag the pendulum down like one way, but then you also have faith, which could also do that. And your goal is to keep them balanced and flat. And when you do that, you have this wonderful life that you're living where you can sit down with the Lord. You can go then work with the Lord, and you're really truly living in ora et labora, which is what we're called to do. Like the passage in James said, that's the goal.
Work and pray. Yep, you can't pick one or the other. So I think the word of the day for sure is balance. What a revolutionary idea. So Dan, what is this week's good news?
Yeah, I think this week's good news is ora et labora. Go forth, work, and pray. And don't forget to spend time stopping with the Lord. But when you leave, bring him with you. Don't leave him in the chapel. Bring him along with you to go forth into your studies and whatever you're going to be doing.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in. This was Good News with Dan and Luce. I'm Lucy Shifko.
I'm Dan Masacchio. Go forth and proclaim the good news.